Hello, my name is Giles Davies from Microsoft in the UK, and in this session I'd like to talk to you about the testing tools that Microsoft has available in the Visual Studio family of tools. A lot of people are familiar with Visual Studio as a development environment, and obviously it's very strong in that area and that's where its background is. But there have been some testing tools in earlier versions of Visual Studio, but what I wanted to do was to make you aware of the focus on testing tools that came with the latest release in Visual Studio 2010. Now, there are two levels of testing, effectively. One level, which I'm not going to talk about in this session, is around code quality. So these are primarily developer responsibilities that focus on areas such as unit testing, test-driven development, code coverage, code metrics, static analysis, code profiling, those kind of activities. And that's something that Visual Studio provides to the developer within the Visual Studio development environment. But what I wanted to talk about in this session were the specific testing tools that can be of use and value to either developers who are testing or to testers and QA departments. And what I want to do is run through the capabilities that are now available. And where I'm going to start is with something called the Microsoft Test Manager. This is a brand new tool in the 2010 release, and it's physically separate to Visual Studio itself. And what it was really trying to set out to address was two problems. One was that we don't want to have to ask testers to use Visual Studio as the environment for managing test cases. And secondly, that there was some functionality that we didn't have that would help testers in their role. So Test Manager, Microsoft Test Manager, provides, first of all, a standalone tool dedicated for testers. And the second is that it provides testing capabilities around test case management. So for example, you can create test plans, you can create test suites, and you can have test cases inside those test suites. You can have a mix and match approach to that as well. And very importantly is that you can associate your test cases to requirements that are held in the same back-end overall development and test environment, which is Team Foundation Server. So if you're looking to set up test coverage, how many of our requirements have actually got test cases, etc., how many aren't covered, then that's something you can do as a tester inside Microsoft Test Manager. Now what it also does is provides very sophisticated manual testing support. And so what we mean by that is, first of all, you can create the test cases themselves with the steps, and that can include things like common steps, so you can share steps across test cases. You can also put in parameterized steps, so for example URLs or login IDs and that kind of thing. You can parameterize and data drive as required. But what we really wanted to address there was that actually we can collect a lot of information on behalf of the tester should you want us to do so. So this concept we've wrapped up into something called actionable bugs. And the idea here is that when a tester is testing the application under test, if they find a bug, they can raise that bug inside Team Foundation Server, but what we can do is automatically capture a great deal of information, really trying to reduce the amount that the tester has to put in. So for example, which test steps have been carried out, which passed, which failed. We can take a screen cam of an actual video of what happened during the test so that a developer or somebody else can see what the tester did. We can track the keystrokes and mouse gestures so that we know what happened during the test. We can record the system information, how much CPU, memory, who was logged in, what resolution, and a lot more information besides. And that combined effect is really to say, well, actually, first of all, from the tester's point of view, just file the bug. You don't need to add a lot more other than the title and a priority, perhaps. And you don't need to remember what was I doing. Let's go and find out this information. And from a developer's point of view, and for the flow between developers and testers, it means you should cut down on that exchange of information. That the first reaction from the developer doesn't need to be, well, okay, fine, but I now need to know the following answers. We've also got the ability to do something called fast forwarding, and this is the replay of those manual test steps. So this is effectively automation of the manual test. It's not an automated test because we don't automatically verify the outcome of the test. That's left to the tester to verify, but we do automatically replay the actions, so that, for example, you could have login to a website, fill in some form details, click on a button, and leave it to the tester to decide whether or not it actually worked. Now from there, what we can do is we can actually use the basis of that to create an automated functional test. And these are called coded UI tests. That's a new form of test that we introduced in 2010. You can also create those from scratch, so you don't have to do it this way around. But that's essentially a what should I do and play it back kind of automated test script that then allows you to build up automated regression suites. And to be able to increase the number of those so that you can achieve coverage of your applications throughout the life cycle. Another important category of test tools that we have is around load and performance testing. So for this, you can choose the number of virtual users, set up a scenario, and then say run that against the application under test. There is an architecture involving test controllers and test agents, so you can distribute that load out to appropriate machines and so on. Now, one of the things I'll point out with that is that we recently introduced the virtual user load test pack. If you've got Visual Studio and MSDN, then you actually now are entitled to unlimited virtual users for free. So out of the box we provide 250 virtual users, and you can buy additional packs. But if you've got MSDN as well, then you can get an unlimited number now, which makes this a much more affordable option to look at load testing for a lot of people. Another important area is around the support for virtual test environments. So in particular, trying to look at the problem of, well, how can testers more easily provision test environments rather than spend a reasonable proportion of their time simply preparing environments in which to put test code to carry out the tests? How can we automate that? And we have something called lab management. And lab management it really provides the ability to create template virtual machines, organize those quickly and easily into virtual test environments with one or more virtual machines, and then have the ability to start, stop, pause, provision, tear down that test environment very easily on the same hardware. It can also work with the Microsoft development environment to provide a full application lifecycle deployment mode for example, in an overnight build. So, for example, you could have a build that will go and get a particular release from source control, label that, compile it. What it will then can do is spin up the virtual test environment, deploy that code out into one or more virtual machines, run automated functional testing and/or load testing against that, record the results, and then tear down that environment and leave it clean for the next test steps. So there's a lot of testing tools that we can provide. I say the sort of summary here, I guess, for me is there is now a test management tool which is independent of Visual Studio. You can have one or both on your desktop, but there is now a tool for testers aimed at them. We've got sophisticated manual testing support, there's automated functional testing support, and we've got load and performance testing, as well as virtual test environment support as well. So there's a lot out there. If that sounds interesting, we'd be very happy to talk to you, and would welcome any inquiries around that. Thank you.